Article 59(4) of the Constitution and Chapter 15 of the Constitution. We also have the Commission on Administrative Justice Act and the Access to Information Act and the Fair Administrative Action, among other statutes that govern the work of the Commission. We are expectant and work as the advocate of the citizen, both at the national and the county level, to ensure that the public or the citizen is able to receive the services that they should to the last mile. And I like the fact that most of us in this conference have spoken about the last mile, devolution of public service to the last mile. As a commission, under the enforcement of administrative justice, we try to ensure that public are able to get services from the government officers. We deal with issues of maladministration, abuse of power, delay in ensuring that services is given to the people. So whenever issues arise as to services, then the citizens come to the commission, they complain to the commission, and we are able to manage the issues of dispute resolution through alternative dispute resolution by speaking to the public officers who are not carrying out their duty or who are participating in the maladministration. As it were in the year 2016, Parliament gave the Commission the mandate of ensuring that we actualize Article 35 of the Constitution through the Access to Information Act. The Access to Information Act then is able to ensure that citizens get information from government. And we are implementing the Access to Information Act, and I'll get into that as we move on. The Commission is supposed to ensure that devolution becomes a reality, because devolution was founded on the big dreams of Kenyans. It is therefore our duty as stewards to promote and protect the principles and best practices of good governance. As a commission, when I became the chairperson, I realized that we did not have a regional coordination unit within the commission. And therefore, we created a regional coordination unit that is able to ensure that the process of decentralization of the Commission's office is done in a manner that supports all Kenyans. But in as far as the regional offices are concerned, we have 6 regional offices, and of course the headquarters in Nairobi. We have regional offices in Mombasa, in Kisumu, Eldoret, Isiolo, Nyahururu, and Garissa. We also have a partnership with the Ministry of Public Service that we agreed that within the Huduma centers, they're going to give us an ombudsman's desk. So we have 12 ombudsman's desk in 12 Huduma centers across the country. That involves Kisii, Taita Taveta, Makueni, Bungoma, Kakamega, among other counties that we have managed to put an ombudsman's desk. In as far as further decentralization is concerned, we have success stories. And the question has been, you have decentralized your services. How then have you made sure that it has worked? We have ensured that we access the counties at the local level. This has enhanced accessibility and faster response time. Because when we have offices at the local level, then the citizens are able to register or lodge their complaints at the local level. As we speak now, as a result of the access to justice in the form of regional decentralization, we've been able to have a record time in terms of settling complaints that are lodged into the commission. The minimum time is 30 days, and the maximum time that we have set in the service charter of the commission is 180 days. And this is when a complaint has to go into inquiries, investigations, among other processes of alternative dispute resolution. We've also been able to have a community engagement where we go to the communities. We realize that as a commission, we need to move to the communities and be able to speak to the people, because you can't just sit in an office and expect the public to know about you. So we have purpose to move it to the communities. We have a situation where the Ogiek community obtained a judgment, which is the African Court judgment, and they came to the commission for purposes of implementation of that judgment, because it was a land rights question. We decided to move into the Mau Forest to be able to understand how then we can advise government to implement the Arusha or the African Court's judgment. When we moved to the locus in Kuo, or the site, we were able to understand that there are various communities that live within the Mau Forest whose questions that they raised must be answered. So that is an ongoing process that we are working with the Ministry of Lands, the National Lands Commission, the Nakuru County government, which we have visited. And as we speak now, through our community engagement, our return, the returns according to the nationwide survey, customer satisfaction survey that was conducted in 2020, gave a response that 44% of the citizens are able to understand the mandate of the commission and report to the commission situations that require our attention, as opposed to the 28% that we found when I became the chairperson in 2018, because we conducted a survey then. We also have situations where we engage the public in regulations. After the Access to Information Act was passed, then as a commission we were required to ensure that we have the access to information regulations. We did an extensive public participation by visiting various counties, talking to the governors, talking to the county governments, talking to the people themselves, and them telling us then how they would want information accessed from the counties. And right now, the Committee in Parliament on Delegated Legislation has approved the Access to Information regulations. We have also ensured that we strengthen the counties, because we realize that after every election, when governors take over, there's always a new team. So it doesn't matter whether we trained the previous public officers, governors will always have a new team that is coming on board. So we purposed as a commission to ensure that we train the other officers who come in so that they are able to understand the vision, because every governor who comes to the office has an agenda, as a promise that she or he has made to the people who elected them. So we ensure that we are able to train the officers so that they can understand the laws that govern devolution and be able to marry the vision of the laws that govern them and the vision of the governors that have come into office. We also put up structures at the counties on grievance redress mechanisms, and as we speak right now, we've been able to work with the Council of Governors. We have an MOU with the Council of Governors, and this MOU allowed the committee that is led by Governor Mutula Kilonzo to be able to form, to agree on establishment of a county administrative ombudsman. So that at the county level, because there are complaints that arise at the county level, we can have an internal structure which we are calling the County Administrative Ombudsman. So we are working with the governors to make sure that they establish an internal structure through the County Administrative Ombudsman, who then can deal with these complaints, and if situations arise that are not managed by the County Ombudsman, then they come to the National Ombudsman. In terms of decentralization, we've also partnered with the counties. We have the county government of Laikipia that was able to give us space, because you realize that it's not always that you get the budget to open offices across the counties. We have spoken to some governors. The county government of Laikipia then allowed us space in Nyahururu, and we opened an office in Nyahururu of the Ombudsman. We've also realized that it's easier to work with other commissions, and we've worked with the National Gender and Equality Commission to open an office in Garissa, by sharing the space that they have in Garissa. And we moved to Isiolo and gave the National Gender Equality Commission our space in Isiolo so that we can share the space and be able to deliver the services to their people. The most important thing that I'm proud of as a chair is the complaints management information system. We were able to ensure that we digitize the commission. By digitizing the commission, through our department on information technology, we were able to come up with a CMIS structure where citizens can lodge their complaints through their systems, through the computers, without coming to the commission. So we have a complaints management information system where you can sit at the comfort of your house and lodge a complaint to the commission, and we are able to follow that complaint with the respective institutions and ensure that your complaint is sorted. As a result of the CMIS, since it was launched in May 2022, we've been able to have 3,274 complaints that have been lodged through the system. That is a record 250 complaints that have been lodged per month through the CMIS system. So for us, as we sit here today, is to say that hata mnyonge hana haki. It is our duty to ensure that the mnyonge is able to get the justice they deserve. Also, at this point, I would say that good governance is putting people at the center of development process. You cannot have good governance without putting the people at the center. We've issued advisory opinions to national government, especially like when there was delays in transfer of government money to the counties. We were able to issue an advisory opinion to the treasuries to tell them, release this money to the counties. During the COVID situation, we issued an advisory because we realized that counties were not working in coordination with the national government. So this is work in progress. We will continuously engage the counties to ensure that we work together to deliver for the people of Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That was really a very good and clear outline of what you do. Quite a lot of work at the county level, good collaborations with the county governments, working closely with other commissions, and putting the people at the center. And that is really what good governance is about. And we should be able to then move closer to our development outcomes by this work. Happy to hear that you're encouraging the Council of Governors to establish a county administrative ombudsman. I think that is really something good to take on from here. Linked to that, CPA John Ogallo, Commissioner from EACC, your work and CAJ's work are not too far off from each other, but you also then build a lot from what comes out of the Senate in terms of being able to investigate some of the malpractices that do come out of counties. Corruption is a topic that has come up on this panel, that has come up throughout the conference. Would want to hear in brief, as you briefly outline the EACC's role, what you think are your success stories with regards to preventing and information sharing, preventive measures within the counties. When I look at for example, your National Ethics and Corruption Survey, most of the issues that citizens are complaining about to the EACC are national government functions, but I found a number of key county government functions like medical attention, land conflict, employment, business permits, water connections, and of course, tenders, etc. What are your success stories? But it would be good to know whether your recommendations, your investigations, your data, you even rank counties based on how much bribery is taking place. Are your recommendations being taken up by counties? Do you have a dialogue with counties to look at this data, and are they interested in improving or not? Over to you, Commissioner. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Good morning, participants. Governance, of course, is a very important topic for the Commission. The EACC, as some of you may know, was formed in pursuant to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Act of 2011, which is pursuant to Article 79 of the Constitution. And the law provides or gives specific mandate to the EACC, which is to prevent and combat corruption and malpractices and economic crimes through law enforcement, prevention measures, public education and awareness, and also to promote the standards of integrity, ethics, and anti-corruption practices in the country. What does that mean in practice? It involves specifically investigations or law enforcement, which involves investigations, and recommend to the Office of the DPP cases that need to be prosecuted in respect of acts of corruption, bribery, or economic crimes, or any violation of the codes of ethics. As you know, the mandate to prosecute is given to the Director of Public Prosecutions. The EACC, what we do is to investigate and send the files to the DPP with the recommendations on prosecution. We also give recommendations on files that need to be closed. We also provide recommendations on administrative action that needs to be taken. And ultimately, the DPP takes the final decision, because what we submit are basically recommendations. And over the past 5 years, there's been some improvement in terms of the rate of concurrence with respect to the recommendations that the EACC gives to the DPP. For example, in the last 5 years, the rate of concurrence was about 90%. But that has to be looked at in the context of the composition of those recommendations. For example, where we recommend that the files be closed, or where we recommend that administrative action be taken, the concurrence rate has always been like 100%. The challenge comes where we recommend prosecution, where the concurrence rate drops a little bit to about just slightly over 50%. So that's the challenge that we face sometimes. But also the Commission is mandated to institute and conduct proceedings in court for purposes of recovery and protection of public property. Now, these ones do not have to go to the DPP. The Commission actually has the mandate to go to court directly in order to be able to recover corruptly acquired assets, and also to protect public property, or to freeze or confiscate the proceeds of corruption and related matters. So here, the Commission has been very successful, actually, in terms of recovery of proceeds of corruption. If I can give you some statistics, which are also actually out there in the public domain, over the past 5 years, we operate within a strategic plan that covers 5 years. So when we talk about the past 5 years, we're talking about the period of 2018 and 2023. And prior to that, we had another strategic plan that was also implemented. Now, within the past 5 years, these are some of the data that we have collected. The EACC was able to recover and surrender back to the public benefit assets which comprise cash, movable and immovable properties worth approximately 23.84 billion Kenya shillings. That is property that has been recovered and reverted back for public use. During the same period also, the Commission averted loss approximately amounting to 34.5 billion Kenya shillings. Now, averting loss means that the Commission, through intelligence and also proactive investigations, we were able to disrupt the corruption networks before they actually took place or before the money was actually lost. And during this period also, we are pursuing actually for forfeiture of corruptly acquired assets and unexplained wealth, approximately worth 40.78 billion Kenya shillings. So these are, numbers that, if you put them in perspective, at least will give you a sense as to what the Commission has been able to do in order to safeguard assets and the wealth of the country. But in terms of investigations also, just to give you a sense of how far we have done this, during that period we carried out or concluded over 700 investigations on corruption and related offenses, out of which 251 corruption cases were finalized in court. And of course, you know that when matters go to the court, they are out of the hands of the Commission because they have to be adjudicated based on the evidence and the quality of the prosecution that is made. That will actually determine the success rate of the cases that have been put or forwarded to the court. And so we cannot talk so much about our own success in that respect, but of course what matters is that the quality of the evidence that we are able to provide, which then supports the prosecutions or successful prosecutions. Now, as part of the strategic focus, because as you know, the Commission cannot be everywhere all the times, we have actually had a focus on specific areas. For example, the Commission has prioritized the investigation of high-impact cases. Now, what do I mean by high-impact cases? These are cases that are touching on key service delivery sectors, for example, health sector, education sector, infrastructure, because these are areas that impact the wananchi directly. So there is a priority in terms of investigation in those sectors that have a direct relevance to service delivery. We also prioritize investigations that are involving high-value amounts, mainly, for example, in procurement activities, in infrastructure mainly, because these are high-volume cases, so we target those ones in order to be able to safeguard the resources. Another area of focus, of course, is we also do focus on cases that are involving, personalities, high personalities, people with, high profile, because, again, we want to be able to send the message that if you are given a responsibility, you are expected to discharge those responsibilities with the due regard to ethical values, with the due regard to the norms and integrity and ethics that is expected of that particular office. So you probably have seen cases where, high-profile cases are being recommended for prosecution, and that is because we are actually targeting those ones. It doesn't mean that low-value cases are being ignored, but we have other mechanisms of dealing with specific low-value corruption and unethical practices. So these are some of the areas where we have been focusing, but also it has to be understood that fighting corruption is not just about law enforcement. We are also focusing on prevention. And here is an area where we are working very closely with the counties to institute mechanisms that can prevent corruption from taking place, because we do not want situations where we are focusing only on law enforcement. Law enforcement is also another preventive measure, but we also have specific programs that are intended to prevent corruption, particularly in the devolved units. And here what we have been doing is that we've carried out a number of systems reviews, basically to be able to identify risks in the systems and procedures and practices that actually can provide loopholes for corrupt practices taking place. And we are also specifically working on corruption risk assessments, which are conducted to identify or bring out corruption vulnerabilities, particularly in the county governments, so that we make recommendations to the county governments on how those vulnerabilities and weaknesses can be addressed going forward, so that at least the loopholes are sealed. The only challenge we do have is we make recommendations and we're able to monitor the implementation of some of those recommendations, but we have no mechanism of enforcing. So, for example, you carry out a systems review in a county government or a county assembly, and you make recommendations. They can just sit on that. Although we require them to submit an implementation plan, which we are able to monitor, but in some cases you find that because of some changes in government, for example, if you have a change in leadership, some of those recommendations are put in the back burner. But we do monitor to make sure that those recommendations are implemented. Another way that we're working with the county governments to institute preventive measures is through the creation, the establishment of corruption prevention committees, as well as the appointment of integrity assurance officers. So we have worked with the county governments to develop and establish and operationalize corruption prevention committees, and provided the guidelines which also help in terms of training and capacity development. So far, we have done this in 6 pilot counties of Kisumu, Siaya, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, and Elgeyo Marakwet. And going forward, we are going to upscale this and roll it out to the other counties so that each and every county has an operational corruption prevention committee. And what this does is that they are able now to do their own corruption risk assessment. We provide the capacity building so that they are able to do their own corruption risk assessments, to be able to identify their own risk. And we work with them to follow up on the implementation of the issues that come out of those corruption risk assessments. So as I said, the Commission works on a 5-year strategic plan, and we have already now finalized the next strategic plan for 2023-2028, where we are actually taking stock of the lessons learned in the previous strategic plans in order to do things differently, to upscale, for example, in terms of investigations, using more intelligence, using technology in the investigations, and also surveillance mechanisms that will actually help us to upscale the fight against corruption going forward. And again, as I said, we're not just focusing on law enforcement, but also working on more of the systems reviews and corruption risk assessments, and also making sure that the corruption prevention committees that have been established in the counties are working, so that at least we are able to address this menace of corruption going forward. So I'll stop there, and happy to answer any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ogalo. That's the really insightful role of EACC sometimes we don't get to, if you don't go out to look for this information, we won't really know that there's a lot of work that you are doing. And just looking at especially, I like that focus, the areas that you focus on, high impact cases in sectors, a lot of them devolved sectors that have a direct hit on the people, high value amounts and high profile personalities, but also interesting around your work on the preventive side, which I do hope does have linkages to CAJ's also mechanisms at the county level. I want to shift to our final set of panelists, and these are the development partners and civil society. And I will start with Sheila Masinde from TI Kenya. Sheila, listening to your fellow panelists coming from different institutions, constitutional institutions, parliament, and others, you as TI do a lot of research, looking at actually a lot of what the institutions represented on the panel are doing, and whether they are responsive to Kenyans, and whether governance is improving. I don't know, are you seeing any positive results coming out from your research on the work that our governance institutions are doing? And if yes, please let us know. But also, if there are challenges and barriers that eventually affect development outcomes based on your recommendations not being implemented, what are these? And in 5 minutes, tell us that alongside what your organization does. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Con, and good morning to everyone. I work for Transparency International Kenya. It's a national civil society organization working in Kenya for now almost 25 years, but associated with the Global Transparency International movement, which is working towards a corruption-free society. And yes, I believe that we will see that in the fullness of time if we continue working on a number of things, some of which have been mentioned here. And we work through research, as Con has addressed a question to me, public interest litigation, advocacy, provide legal aid to victims of corruption, as well as support institutions who want to deal with issues around anti-corruption, so in terms of institutional strengthening. And directly to your question, Con, in regard to research, and we started, particularly in regard to research that we have done on county governance, we have conducted a research called the County Governance Status Study, which we first did in 2016 and followed up in 2020. And of course, in 2016, the county governance structures, particularly in regard to accountability, were very nascent. And what we found, because that particular piece of research assesses issues around integrity, transparency, accountability, and service delivery, to what extent have counties been able to build mechanisms towards promoting this, and what functions have they developed in regard to this? In 2016, we didn't find much work or structures that had been built, but that was just 3 years after the devolution. But in 2020, we found a bit of improvement. Commissioner Ogallo has talked about, the placement of integrity assurance officers. And actually, that's one of the recommendations that we had made. We had made recommendations for the formation of corruption prevention committees. He has just said that we now have 6, I think you're piloting it in 6 counties. I think one of the other issues we raised was lack of effective public participation and access to information. Chair Florence Kajiju has talked about what they're doing in regard to access to information, but I think we really need those regulations like today so that we are able to get the process of accessing information, not just at national level, but also at county level, because many Kenyans still go to county offices, demand information, particularly in regard to fiscal information, but are not able to get this information, despite the fact that that right is enshrined in Article 35 of the Constitution. On public participation, we have increasingly seen counties coming up with frameworks in regard to that, but I think there's still a challenge in terms of the quality of public participation. I still get the sense that it's all about ticking a box, that there was public participation. There's a law being developed. You call for public participation and feedback, but many times you find that citizens are given very little time to be able to respond. And sometimes when you look at the final draft or what is eventually passed, even in the county assemblies, it doesn't really incorporate what citizens presented. So we also have to consider what is the quality of public participation and what mechanisms are really being used to get citizens to be able to give feedback or really effectively participate. You still find mechanisms or media that are inaccessible to citizens. So maybe you use a newspaper advertisement to call for public participation, but here to know mashinani, many people do not have access to newspapers, rather than use vernacular stations. Those are some of the things that we have been monitoring over the past couple of years. So seeing some small little improvements, but still quite a little more to be done. One of the other things that we also noted, and I think Senator Kajwang has addressed this, and I've taken that recommendation, in terms of building the oversight capacity of members of county assemblies, because we found that even in the last survey and one of the other studies that we have done is called the Local Integrity System Study, where we look into the functions and mechanisms within the county assemblies and county executives to be able to ensure accountability within their systems. And we found that members of county assemblies had little experience or capacity to be able to provide effective oversight, particularly in regard to the public audit process. And one of the things that we have been doing together with other civil society actors is trying to have a structured way of engaging members of county assembly. We have been training them, but what we're also trying to do is form what we call the County Assemblies Representatives Network Against Corruption, which are modeled along the lines of what we call the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption, which is a caucus of members of parliament who are then able to work on issues around corruption, both inside the House and also outside, in regard to representation, oversight, and legislation. So we've tried to do that at the county level. We actually now have an operating CANAC, we call it CANAC, in Kakamega County, but I take note of the need to also build capacity of the technical staff, and we try as much as possible to also roll it out to other counties. We tried to roll it out in Kwale, but then sustaining it was a bit of a challenge. We've also been engaging the Office of the Auditor General. They have been running what they call they've just actually started the piloting and finished the pilot of the Citizen Accountability Audit process, which is really in line with also what Senator Kajwang was saying, that it's sometimes not just about figures in terms of what you see on the audit reports, but you also want to see the quality of work, what is, in terms of performing a real audit in terms of value for money. What is the effectiveness, efficiency of all these structures that are being supported by taxpayers' money? So we worked together with our civil society organizations and the Office of the Auditor General to pilot this, and I hope this is something that we can effectively institute across all audit processes so that citizens are well engaged. But one of the outcomes of the Citizen Accountability Audit process, the pilot rather, is that we really need to fast track the public participation and access to information frameworks, both at the national and at the county level, because we still have issues in regard to public participation. One of the other things that we're also focusing on, just to try and address the barriers and challenges that we are seeing at the county level in regard to governance and specifically corruption, is also trying to promote social accountability. I've already talked about the citizen accountability audit exercises, but we have other tools that we use as civil society. We have this civilian oversight mechanisms, public expenditure tracking, social audits, which have been actually quite effective in terms of getting information of how money has been used on the ground, whether those projects that you see on paper or that are reported in various reports actually exist. So getting citizens to actually go to the ground and audit these projects has been very useful. But one challenge in terms of them actually getting information has also, we don't have those regulations in regard to access to information, particularly at the county level. And so if we are able to pass this, Commissioner Chair Kajuju, I think that would be very effective in terms of promoting social audits and social accountability generally at the county level. I think, let me stop there because of time and possibly engage more as we maybe go into plenary.
Thank you very much, Sheila, for those remarks, and really good to see that the civil society is able to carry out research in addition to what our public institutions are doing, but also being able to put pressure on public institutions to continually implement laws and policies that will eventually have a positive impact on our governance. Coming to Sheila Karani, you sit here as a development partner alongside Anthony from the UNDP. Sheila, you're likely to have a vantage position because you work across the board with government and with independent commissions and with civil society, partnering with each of them to help them achieve their objectives. And it would be good to hear from you, Sheila, what in your work, and maybe broadly, not just USAID, but in your understanding of the development partners space and work, what are some of the effective approaches and strategies that promote good governance, especially in the county governments? What have you seen? What have you done? And how have you worked with the institutions represented here to ensure that good governance is promoted? And are you seeing this taking us to our goal of equitable and sustainable development? 5 minutes. No. Yes, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Con, and good morning, fellow participants. It is an honor for me to sit here with all of you and to celebrate 10 years into Devolution. As the conference was being prepared, I had deja vu moments because a number of us have walked this journey from the first Devolution conference that took place in Kwale. So let me take this opportunity to congratulate all of you, from the national government to county governments, to independent commissions, civil society organizations, the private sector, and citizens for all the efforts, hard work, and progress that we have all jointly made over the last 10 years. Let me just give a little bit of overview of what USAID does, and I'll try to do everything, Con, within 5 minutes. So let me start by indicating that USAID is committed to inclusive and sustainable agriculture-led economic growth. We are rolling this out by using an approach that puts Kenyans in the leadership, what we are calling Kenya-led, Kenya-owned, Kenya-managed, because we believe that this is what will achieve sustainable development. Again, as I said, we development partners, not just USAID, have walked this journey with the government, the national government and county government since 2013. So I'll speak from some of the lessons we drew from the initial devolution program which USAID supported, which was known as a HADI, which stood for Agile and Harmonized Assistance for Devolved Institutions. This program was implemented between 2014 and 2020, and I'll just highlight some of the lessons that we learned, all of us collectively. And these lessons speak to the three components that my colleague from UNDP has highlighted around institutional arrangements, resources and management of those resources, and then rules of the game. So under the AHADI program, I'll just, as I said, highlight a few lessons and achievements. Most of the counties were very successful in setting up the necessary institutional arrangements, ranging from the administration side of the arrangements to other processes and systems, both financial systems as well as, performance management at the county level. We also saw improvements across counties with regards to inter-county coordination and collaboration. There were also very good steps and developments around development of training materials, training curriculum, revision of policies, and also the aspect of civic education around devolution. So these are just highlights of some of the lessons and achievements under Ahadi. Now, Con, moving to the question you asked around strategies and approaches that will, promote good governance. I'll mention three. The first one is that promoting good governance requires robust public participation. I think those who've spoken ahead of me, including my namesake, has highlighted this aspect. And we are all aware that, the Constitution provides for robust public participation in various sections. The second lesson, which refers to the whole institutional arrangement, is that strengthening intergovernmental institutions and collaboration between national and county governments will lead to successful devolution and eventually equitable and sustainable development. We've seen progress. Those of you who've been around for long remember that during the initial years of devolution, the relationship between the two levels of government was strained, competitive, and contentious. However, in the recent past, this intergovernmental relations coordination has greatly improved, and we've seen also the review of a number of laws and policies related to, intergovernmental coordination and collaboration. The third aspect or lesson is that while counties are making good progress around public financial management, so this speaks to the issue around resources and management of resources. However, there's still challenges around PFM. My colleague from UNDP touched on this. We continue to see that economic development is unevenly distributed 10 years into devolution. There are a number of, very few. He actually talked about 5 counties that are contributing to a significant portion of the GDP, while the counties at the bottom are contributing a small percentage to the GDP. So we see economic development continues to be unevenly distributed. The other challenge around PFM touches on budget performance. And that, and this, I think this was covered yesterday extensively. We continue to see that on average, 23% of county government, 23% of county budgets are not being implemented. And this presents a significant opportunity cost in terms of service delivery. In addition, 14% of county budgets are not matched with the funds available in the county revenue fund accounts. So there is need to improve budget performance, and this will require proper planning, efficient expenditure management, as well as transparency and accountability. And then the third lesson around PFM, again, this was extensively discussed yesterday, is around the own source revenue. And the performance has been inconsistent and below estimated potentials. So those are some of the lessons that we've learned. I think even other development partners that are working in this space, these are some of the lessons that we are taking forward as we get into this new phase of devolution. In terms of what USAID is doing moving forward, let me mention that our strategy places a very heavy emphasis on partnership. As I mentioned, our current strategy is all about partnerships and enabling Kenyans, the county governments, civil society, private sector to be in the forefront of coming up with solutions, because we believe that this is what will lead to sustainability. One of the partnerships that we are currently working on is what we call local development organizations. And we are partnering with a number of counties to set up local development organizations, LDOs. I'm seeing some of the county governments represented here. And these are umbrella organizations. And what USAID is doing is facilitating civil society organization, community-based organizations, private sectors from these counties to come together and organize so that they can have collective voice and be able to engage and to participate in governance processes. In addition to the LDOs, and so far we have been able to partner with 11 counties. So far 11 counties have successfully formed LDOs, and these LDOs have developed strategic plans. They're engaging constructively with their communities and county governments, and we've seen that they've been able to continue mobilizing other CBOs at the county level, including Senator from your county, Homa Bay. There's an LDO that is quite active and very engaged both with the county government as well as with the community-based organizations. Then we are in the process of finalizing a devolution program, which we are hoping will roll out in the next 2 months. Again, this program will build on the objectives and the will build on the lessons that I mentioned. And its objectives include improving financing and efficiency in the health sector. While it's a governance program, we have made a deliberate decision to focus on a specific sector, and that is the health sector. The program will also improve policy coordination at the intergovernmental level. And of course, the program will work both with the county governments, that is the county executive and the county assembly, as well as equipping citizens so that they can actively and proactively engage in key governance processes. So that is on the governance front, and at USAID we continue to work and partner with county governments and national governments in the other sectors. Let me mention the health sector and the agriculture sector that are devolved. In order to, again, enhance service delivery. So I'm being warned that my time is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Eric Latif is on stage, which means my time is up here, and our time is up here. Eric, of course, that means we don't have a chance to do plenary discussions or for me to give a summary of this discussion. But Eric, the governor of Mombasa, who could make it to this panel, had a very important point he wanted just brought out, especially by the UNDP country director, on the UN General Assembly that will be held mid-next month. If you can just allow Mr. Ngororano to just tell us, because I think everyone, the governors and the parliamentarians, the civil society will probably all attend that. If then Mr. Ngororano can tell us a bit about just the theme of that upcoming UN General Assembly and how it ties to our conversation today. And we're done.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think in the interests of time, in collaboration with our friends at COG, we
we will send a brief so that those, including the friends who are not with us today, can receive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngorano. Ladies and gentlemen, let us appreciate our panel this morning. I hope you had an informative session like I did, and we really appreciate. And you can find time to speak to them. These are all very accessible Kenyans and Rwandese seated before us. So please feel free. Thank you very much. Eric Latif, over to you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause, please, for this panel. My mic. Let's clap for the panel, please, and as we usher them off the stage, asanteni sana. Very engaging and very good conversations that you've had this morning, hearing from the various sectors. Asanteni sana. A round of applause. Please stand for a pose for a photo here as I call up the next group up on stage. Con. Panelists, you'll take a photo just up here for Mheshimiwa Florence. There's a photo session. So just take a quick photo as I introduce the next panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, that's why you're seeing me having to rush that panel off the stage so we can invite the next one, so that we are also on time for our closing ceremony this afternoon, and also in good time for lunch and all the other deliberations. Our next conversation will be on affirmative action, linking the lessons to a sustainable future. The objective here is to examine the strides that have been made in the affirmative action agenda and propose responsive measures that can be adopted to guarantee the place of women, the youth, and the most vulnerable in governance. This panel will be moderated by Ms. Daisy Amdani. Daisy is the Executive Director at Crown Trust. A round of applause, please, as we welcome Daisy up on stage. She will come and introduce her panelists and also the keynote speaker for this particular one. We hope that this panel conversation will be concluded by about 12:45, so we can get into the next set of the program. Another warm round of applause, please, for Daisy as she comes.
Thank you so much, Eric Latif. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Daisy Amdani, and I'm the Executive Director of Crown Trust. And it is my privilege to moderate this panel. Allow me to invite our keynote speaker and panelists to the stage so that we can have this conversation. Dr. Shaheen. Dr. Shaheen is the current representative of UNICEF Kenya with over 30 years of experience in the development sector in senior leadership positions and in building large social sector development and humanitarian programs for non-profit organizations. Allow me also to invite Senator Catherine Muma, who is a nominated senator and an advocate of the High Court, a passionate champion for women's rights and adolescents, and has made significant contributions to human rights practice and activism, and her commitment to health rights and advocacy as a founder of Adolescent Health and Rights in Africa. Also, allow me to invite Ms. Anna Mutavati, who is the country representative for UN Women in Kenya. Anna is a gender equality advocate and women's rights lawyer with 24 years experience. She has worked with UNFPA, UNICEF, and UN Women. Her achievements include support to legal reforms on gender discriminatory laws and support to women and children to assert their rights. Allow me also to invite to the stage Ms. Kala Mukavi. She has served as the FAO representative to Kenya since November 2020. Prior to this appointment, Ms. Mukavi worked as director of FAO Liaison Office in New York and is a career diplomat, having served in different functions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Corporation of Mozambique. She also served at the Embassy of Mozambique in Ethiopia and Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Mozambique to Italy, Greece, and Malta, and the permanent representative to FAO and the World Food Programme. Allow me to also invite to the stage Mr. Harun Malim Hassan, who is the Executive Director of the National Council of Persons with Disabilities. He has more than 20 years of experience in public service and community work. He has served as a public administrator in the Office of the District Commissioner and the World Disability Union, and is a member of the US-based global think tank, Association for Research on Nonprofit Volunteer Association. Welcome. Also, allow me to call to the podium Madam Grace Wasike, who will be representing the Cabinet Secretary for Gender, Public Affairs. It is the Ministry of Public Service, Gender, and Affirmative Action. Grace has 30 years' experience in the public service and has mainstreamed gender in the ministries of agriculture, the East African community, and mining, and is currently a director at the State Department of Gender. Finally, allow me to call to the podium Ms. Wangeshi Wachira. Wangeshi is the Executive Director for the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, CREW, a national women's rights NGO focused on championing and building agency among women and girls to transform and build an equal society. Wangeshi has over 16 years of experience in senior management and is well known for her skills in lobbying and advocacy, gender and integration and inclusion. Last but not least, allow me to invite Her Excellency, Governor Gladys Wanga. Makofi Jameni. Gladys Wanga is the current governor of Homa Bay County and the vice chairperson of the COG Committee on Health. She is the first female governor from the western region of the county elected during the 2022 general election. Yes, she's one of the 7 female governors that we have in Kenya. These are the trailblazers. She served as a commissioner in the Parliamentary Service Commission and as the chairperson of the Finance Committee in the National Assembly. Her unwavering commitment to public service and exceptional leadership skills makes her a valuable asset to the people of Homa Bay County and the country at large. Now I can see all our seats are taken, so I think, Madam, oh, there's a seat at the back. Let's do this as we invite Kala. Allow me first to invite Shaheen, who will give us the keynote address, and then we will go into the panel discussion. Welcome, Shaheen.
Excellencies, all the delegates present here, and please accept that I write on the established protocol. Hongera kwa miaka kumi ya ukutuzi nchini Kenya. Congratulations for the 10 years of devolution in Kenya and a successful decade of our devolution journey. And what a transformative journey it has been. From a point of anxiety to where we are today is a point of optimism. Today I am very honored to be with you, celebrating this milestone and reinforcing the path towards Devolution 2.0. And the focus of my remarks centers on 4 key messages. Firstly, devolution is one of the fastest route to equity and inclusion. Second, a data or an evidence-driven budget for effective quality delivery service delivery must work for the poor. Third, empowerment of girls is an urgent need for action. We need to do more. We aren't doing enough. And the last is addressing geographical disparities, which is about leaving no one behind. And the devolution's first decade brought successes, stories of success, growth, challenges, as well as some learnings. And it brought governance closer to the people to improve the service delivery. Tony, in the previous section, the UNDP country director, spoke about how devolution and good governance is about service delivery and effective service delivery. And we heard the Kenya's growth story on day one and how investments will further put Kenya in the global economic landscape. Undoubtedly, growth without equity is meaningless or insufficient. And whereas growth with equity is about social justice and shared prosperity. And the growth story must also tell us how it supports inclusion, reduces poverty, and closes the gap in its ability to reach the last mile in uplifting the most marginalized, the minorities in the remote communities, the children, the women, the disabled, in the refugee camps, in the informal urban settlements. The 2022 Kenya Demographic Health Survey shows some very positive effects of devolution, like the improved immunization and maternal care, about an improved healthcare accesses. You know, we've also heard about an increase in birth attendance from 48 to 89%, all reflects maternal care services on the high. But notably, the decline in stunting from 35 to 18% underscores the strides in nutrition and child development. And these achievements bear testimony and witness to the power of devolution to save lives and create opportunities in Kenya. And why is devolution vital for equity? It targets the most at-risk groups, tackling inequalities, and it's empowering county governments to drive local changes in productivity, fostering self-sufficiency in needs like health and nutrition and water and education, energy and other essential services. His Excellency President Ruto, in his remarks, mentioned about the human capital and the homegrown solutions and domestic resource mobilizations to accelerate poverty and reimagine its economic growth. Over the past decade, we saw how some counties have been beacons of innovations, productivity, and growth. And their success models offer counties that grow more slowly over the past decades and where growth has been less robust. Ladies and gentlemen, our theme, affirmative action, underscores inclusivity. And our inclusion, our conversations must prioritize efforts and resources towards leaving no one behind and fostering well-being and inclusive growth. And I humbly urge the organizers of the conference, as we reconvene for the next Devolution conference, we start the conversation telling us stories about efforts made towards ensuring that no one is left behind, only to be followed by stories of resources and investments made or to be made. the funds following the functions. The 2010 Constitution and the Article 10 and Article 35 recognizes public participation and access to information as a national value and a principle of governance. This was being referred to in the previous session as well. But let's quickly walk through some of the commendable programs the government of Kenya, the county governments notably, have undertaken to ensure inclusion. The establishment of the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund, began last year with the initial 20 billion Kenyan shillings, further supplemented by 10 billion this fiscal year. We all know the transactions have surged, reaching approximately close to about 3.5 million. Mr. Peter Negwa, CEO of the Safaricom M-Pesa, did highlight the millions of the hits on this very platform. Nevertheless, it is important to analyze the fund's accessibility for women and young girls and those from the far-flung areas in the remote Kenyan north and northeastern hinterlands in their participation and geographical distribution. The universal health coverage stands as a transformative path towards healthcare reforms, and the National Health Insurance Fund addresses urgent healthcare needs for underprivileged Kenyans. As the current government, both at the county and the national level, aims for more local engagement as seen as hiring community health promoters, currently standing more than 100,000 being recruited across counties, already exiting the targets. The future focus is on community involvement in decisions and priorities that matters most to them. Further, the social protection programs, and there are many, including the elderly, disabled, orphans, and vulnerable children, offer safety nets, now adapt to shocks, as we've seen in the time of the drought, through wider coverage is very essential. Other initiatives like the Affirmative Action Fund, the Youth Enterprise Fund, the Women Enterprise Fund, all addresses gender-based violence and education reforms. Nevertheless, it's very crucial for both county and national administration to prioritize equitable access to credit, enabling women to register their businesses at par with men, ensuring equal inheritance right, land ownership, aligning the 6 months breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding with the call for 6 months of maternity benefits as an imperative goals. A decentralized system hinges on active involvement and collaboration among all the stakeholders in agriculture, in renewable energy, in entrepreneurship. As Kenya's 47 counties craft the county investment development plans, a crucial step is assessing these plans to ensure gender sensitivity. And I love to give examples, and please pardon me if you don't hear the names of your counties, and which doesn't mean that you aren't necessarily making any efforts. For instance, consider the enhancement of maternal and child health in Kakamega and Vihiga counties, which has made substantial improvements in maternal and child health that has been observed. Counties like Kilifi, Marsabit, West Pokot, Turkana and Kitui, popularly known as niche counties, which is nutritional intervention through cash transfer for health and education, have achieved better nutritional outcomes by integrating social protection, nutrition, and child protection, targeting the lactating and the pregnant and the malnourished children. Additionally, Mombasa County's endeavor to streamline business processes are noteworthy, and these efforts are aimed to improve access, effectiveness, efficiency for people living in far-flung areas who come all the way to Mombasa to ensure that they get access to what they need in terms of getting a form filled up and access to services. Lamu County's emphasis on empowering women highlights the commitment to uplifting the entire communities. This strategy is not only about evidences to advance gender equality, but also showcases how devolution can catalyze grassroots empowerment, fostering a fairer society, and equally about their intervention on national health insurance policies, registering approximately about close to 20,000 people. And that signifies the numerous promising initiatives. Internet connectivity is also about bridging the digital gap. And as we speak, close to about 418 schools out of the targeted 1,100 schools have been connected, primarily targeting 17 counties in Nassau, but also in the rest of the other counties, benefiting over 168,000 learners and teachers. In Busia County, a pioneering initiative called the Accessibility for All program has been introduced by the county government. And Vijay County is not behind in terms of their Vijay County's Disability Fund and People with Disability Act. So therefore, it is important in the first message that the evidence and data-driven budgets ensures optimal service delivery. The role of international budget partnership cannot be undermined as they conduct annual county budget survey across 36 counties, expanding to 47 counties by 2024, ensuring that the voices of the poor people and those at the bottom of the pyramid do influence resource allocations when these decisions are made at the county level. The crux lies in scalability, and proven initiatives like this and many more are well supported by the county government's resources and need to be supported. The potential for expansion holds the promise of hastening inclusive economic growth and poverty reduction. Distinguished guests, investing in the well-being of Kenya's vulnerable groups, children and women who form 48% and 50%, must carry a long-term societal benefit. The longer a girl stays in school, the less the gender-based violence as she experiences and unlocks the potential as a future contributor to the Kenya's economy. The KDH 2022 report reflects pressing concerns such as teenage pregnancy, FGM, underage marriages, and gender-based violence. This includes issues like corporal punishment, violence against children, even including in faith-based organizations and settings, posing barriers to women's and girls' empowerment. So facilitating economic empowerment for women and youth through affirmative action funds can effectively combat violence against women and children. Therefore, it is important that the performance contracts that was talked about must reflect the need to do more for the girls and the women. Nevertheless, achieving greater transparency for citizens' engagement remains very imperative for shaping lives and ensuring accountability. And the convergence, ladies and gentlemen, of stakeholders has been very pivotal in Kenya's successful devolution journey. The United Nations Devolution, Joint Devolution Program, backed by UNICEF, UN Women, and UNDP, alongside the support of Finland, Italy, and Sweden, and many more donors, the USAID, the EU, the World Bank, have been pretty much the evidences that put forward the partnership with the COG, the county governments, in bringing about scalable change and impact. As witnessed in yesterday's session, Grace Nabiswa's articulate presentation of the Children's Resolution and Call to Action at the pre-devolution conference stands as a striking testament to the impactful role of young people, young minds in shaping priorities that directly impacts them and the families. The resounding call, "Nothing for us without us," echoes in our minds. Failing our children is not an option. They embodied our aspiration and the very hope for our tomorrow. It's our responsibility to listen and promptly act for in safeguarding their dreams, we secure our shared futures. Distinguished guests, though progress has been achieved, we've also heard about many challenges, including timely disbursement, adequate and appropriate allocation of resources, etc. We're also happy and recommend the recent commitment to adhere to the legal deadlines for fund disbursement evident in the July disbursement. The current dedication to digitizing government services augurs well for transparency and efficiency in business operation. I must mention the equalization funds that we spoke about stands as a significant leveler and an equalizer, particularly for ASAL regions, counties encountering marginalization. As more number of members becomes claimant to the equalization funds, the lesser is available to do more for many of those concerned in the remote communities in the ASAL. Our engagement strategy for leaving no one behind must be comprehensive and tailored to the unique challenges of each region, especially in ASAL. What should be our engagement strategy for leaving no one behind? And how do we work towards sustainable agricultural practices, livelihood opportunities that suit the local context, reducing vulnerabilities to drought and other challenges, and develop strategies to mitigate climate-related risk, given the vulnerabilities of ASAL counties to climate changes? The journey of Devolution 2.0 must persist, marked by inclusivity and a focus on social services for marginalized groups. County governments must amplify and are amplifying the voices of underrepresented and enact policies that address these vulnerabilities. Looking ahead, the next phase of devolution should prioritize enhanced collaboration, partnership, and adaptability. In closing, Kenya's 10 years of devolution have been a resounding testament to local governments influencing and advancing equity and affirmative action for marginalized community. To quote His Excellency Prime Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Musalia Mutawadi, devolution indeed is the critical jewel in the crown, and that's the new constitution. The aspiration is clear: a thriving Kenya where every citizen prospers and no one is left behind. As the nation's devolution journey continues, unwavering dedication from all stakeholders is crucial to turn this vision into a reality that will shape Kenya's future for generations. Asanteni sana.
Thank you so much, Carla, for that keynote address. Sorry, Shaheen. My apologies, Shaheen. Thank you so much for your keynote address and for setting the tone for our panel and for reminding us how devolution is indeed a game changer. And even as we celebrate devolution as a game changer, we also want to appreciate that affirmative action is an equal game changer within the framework of the Constitution 2010. And so as we examine the strides that have been made, I would like to start with you, Your Excellency, Governor Gladys Wanga. As a legislator, you played a key role in the formation of the Affirmative Action and Social Development Funds, and we've heard from Shaheen how that has had so much potential in improving the lives of so many at the grassroots level. You created awareness on the Affirmative Action Funds for women and youth and persons with disabilities in Homa Bay County. How have these investments translated to sustained economic empowerment for the previously marginalized groups thus far?
Thank you, Daisy, and thank you, Shaheen, for that very insightful statement. As Daisy has correctly pointed out, and let me recognize my colleague governors who are in the audience here, together with senators and the others just listening to the conversations that we're having on affirmative action. And as you've correctly pointed out, I was one of the pioneer woman representatives in Parliament in 2013. And the Constitution had just passed, and when we came in, we were sort of, lost for what really was our role, what really was our responsibility within this new constitutional framework. And we immediately figured out that with devolution, CDF had now been left for education and security. And then the rest of the functions had now gone to the counties. And we quickly figured out that there was a gap on the area of affirmative action and affirmative action groups. And that's when we immediately embarked, the 47 of us, in putting in place regulations that formed the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. And then Affirmative Action Fund was essentially to look at women, persons with disabilities, and youth, and develop programs that could support them. And looking back at what has happened with these affirmative action groups, and we quickly also plugged into the existing, funds, which were the Women Enterprise Fund and the Youth Enterprise Fund, and we gave ourselves the responsibility to popularize these funds. And 10 years on, looking back and looking at what the Affirmative Action Fund has done in various counties across the country in, supporting persons with disabilities with assistive devices and tools of trade, and setting up gender-based violence shelters, and setting up markets, and giving women groups. I've seen groups that I gave money in the initial 2013 that have now grown, into really large groups doing a lot of work. I see my colleague Honorable Kajuju there. We were with her. She's now the ombudsman. We were with her in that pioneer group, and the groups that we worked with then, and just what happened as far as also what we realized is we could give money to the groups, and if we did not entrench financial literacy, the monies would just, go. And when you came later with auditors, and auditors would ask you, where is the money? You said the group was here in this, but they said this is a bush. No, the group used to exist in this area. So it also pointed to the importance of financial literacy and just training the groups on what they would use the grants that were coming from these monies. But also, there is a striking, resemblance. I think Devolution, now that I'm governor and looking, Devolution and Affirmative Action are in the same WhatsApp group. They both strive for empowerment. They both strive for equity. When we say on affirmative action, as Shaheen was saying, groups that were hitherto, not thought about, are now being thought about in the conversation. The same way, parts of this country that were hitherto not thought about before devolution are now part of the big conversation around with devolution. So I think we cannot talk about affirmative action without devolution. Neither can we talk about devolution without affirmative action. And I just wanted to make that point, reflecting on where we came from 2013 with the affirmative action funds. And the big point I want to state as I close is, after we did the regulations for affirmative action, budget is a different story. And budget was a big battle. And I think it's just to note just the importance of maneuvering, within Parliament, just to get money into the budget. And without money in the budget, without seeing that line there, everything comes to naught. So it's a regulatory framework, a policy framework, and then follow it with budget. And later on, I'll speak to, the counties and what we're doing right now, but I just wanted to mention that we actually had to, demonstrate to Mutava Musimi, who was the chair of budget then, and say, no affirmative action funds, no Mutava, and so on and so forth. So budget was a big element of pushing forward the affirmative action agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And we remember that. We remember that. Yes, please, you can clap for her. We remember the battle, and we want to appreciate you, as one of the pioneer affirmative action recipients through the women's rep seat. I hope people remember that the women representative seat is actually an affirmative action seat. But to show just how far you can go, just by entrenching affirmative action, and we want to appreciate also what you did as the chair of the Finance Committee in ensuring budget lines to critical areas. So part of that affirmative action, when your voices are on the table, it actually matters. You can direct budgets to critical areas that need support. And so we want to appreciate you for that and how far it has come. Allow me to now come to you, Mr. Hassan, and thank you for being the only man on this panel. But at least, you have brought the diversity necessary. Yes, we applaud him. We thank you so much for being with us. The sole mandate of the National Council of Persons with Disabilities to facilitate disability mainstreaming in programs in the public and private sector. How has the Council worked with county governments in providing support in data management and disability mainstreaming in county government processes, and including, I will also ask, about representation, because representation of persons with disability in county governments has been, in the county assemblies, has been a very controversial issue, and it's one of the gaps. Despite the provision that they should be there, it is one of the gaps. So perhaps you can also speak to that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dusha, and thank you for recognizing that I'm the only man up with you. Excellencies in the House, the senators, the MCAs, the devolution, critical stakeholders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Toward this conference, the COG organized Children's Devolution Conference a month ago. And what stood out very strongly in the Children's Conference was the level of inclusion. At least a child with disability was picked from all the 47 counties. But what was so inspiring again was the children elected a deaf child to be their conference governor. That's quite amazing. They have never looked at his disability or his different or indifferent. But what they looked at is the content of the gentleman. And to paraphrase what Martin Luther King said, at one time, maybe decades to come, hopefully, we'll even do away with affirmative because we have set the level playing ground so level that will be judged by the content of our character, what we can contribute, and our ability to move, the development forward. The spirit of devolution itself, basically, is an affirmative, the spirit itself. That's why we have equalization fund to allocate money to the counties based on the level of underdevelopment, marginalization, and the level of poverty. That itself is the spirit of an affirmative. But within the counties also, whether they are marginalized or they are developed, let me put it that way, we have super marginalized communities within there. Those are persons with disabilities. But sometimes emphasis has been on youth and women and other minority groups. But because of lack of clear framework on how issues of disabilities at the county level can be done, we might not have a clear parameters or format of engagement. At the national level, through performance contracting mechanism, ministries, departments, and agencies report to the National Council the extent of their disability inclusion and mainstreaming. But independent offices, commissions, and county government, we don't have that clear framework. That's why when it is clearly audited, some counties, maybe the level of inclusion for persons with disability is struggling. Some they have done very well. So as a council, what is our take and what is our engagement with the county, as you ask? The issue of data is critically very important. If we don't have data, then we won't allocate resources, we won't plan. So the data entails now registration of persons with disabilities. And the council, the entity that registers persons with disabilities in this country. For you to access opportunities and services, you must be registered with the government. But before, to register a person with disability in this country was cumbersome and very painful and long. It is so centralized that the signature of Director of Medical Services at the AFI House instructs council now to register that person. But quite recent, in the last 1 or 2 years, closely we have worked with the COG, and thanks to the COG Secretariat and the governor, especially Governor Mudomi, the chair of the Health Committee, we managed, together with other stakeholders, to come up with assessment guidelines, and we moved the signature now from Nairobi to put it to the hands of county directors of health and county directors of medical services in some counties, so that the counties now can register. They put the team, they set the assessment centers so that it can be registered from level 5 to level 4. In that guideline that is developed by Ministry of Health as a policy guidelines, let me put it that way, it has certain functions in it that the county government, because health is devolved, can take up. So the question is, have counties really taken that far? The issue of, accessible assessment centers, putting, equipment in place, devolving further to the ward, that's the last mile, such kind of a thing. Because data is critically a very important thing. And then the other issue, which is core mandate of the council, is disability mainstreaming. Recently, March this year, we released the first report on the status of disability inclusion in Kenya, where we are only looking at national government. And we shared that report quite very gladly with the Senate to help us how it can be a resource in their role as oversight, legislation, or representation. I'm glad to say I'm sharing this podium with Senator Mumo, who shared one of the sessions, when we presented that report. That report clearly brings out the level of employment. The Public Service Commission put 1.5% of Kenyan workforce are persons with disability, an improvement of 0.2% from the previous year. And if you look at this job, and it is gone further details into it, it's just low-level jobs. And by the way, let me say, I'm the only CEO with disability in Kenya. Na mimi niko nyumbani, pale ya walemavu. So when you go down, it looks like, we are not doing so well. So this report clearly brings out, a glaring image of where we are insofar as inclusion and employment is concerned. Some counties, 21 actually, up from 17 in the previous devolution 2, 21. They don't have MCS with disabilities. And this is a constitutional kind of a requirement. And if they are not...
Because I can't change, it's Nimrod. We are talking of an edited, of a clip which has been played around with. Yeah. Do I look like assaulting anybody? I'm a pastor. Parliament for Kitui East, and I was summoned just to be sincere with what happened by the EACC of an incident which happened a week ago around Kitengela in a place I'm trying to put up a home. And yeah, the EACC were concerned because, we are public officers, and they are the people who oversight issues to deal with ethics. So they felt that there are some things they wanted to confirm about my conduct and the rest. So that's why I'm here. Yeah. Do I look like assaulting anybody? I'm a pastor. Yeah, a renowned pastor actually. Converse under you with the ICT and videos and editing and copy pasting and all these, the way you can play around with a video clip. Yeah. I don't know which video you are talking of. There are so many videos of me everywhere. The reason they invited me was to question about my ethics around what happened on that day. And I gave my statement. I've just given my statement, and I'm waiting to see what happens. You have to fight for your rights. Yeah, you can't get to a point of harassing people or beating people, but a man has to do what he has to do as a man for things to move. So given another opportunity, I'll handle it the same way. And that's me, because I can't change. It's Nimrod. We are talking of an edited, of a clip which has been played around with. Yeah. Do I look like assaulting anybody? I'm a pastor. Parliament for Kitui East, and I was summoned just to be sincere with what happened by the EACC of an incident which happened. And I gave my statement. I've just given my statement, and I'm waiting to see what happens. You have to fight for your rights. Yeah, you can't get to a point of harassing people or beating people, but a man has to do what he has to do as a man for things to move. So given another opportunity, I'll handle it the same way. And that's me, because I can't change. It's Nimrod. We're talking of an edited, of a clip which has been played around with. I've just given my statement, and I'm waiting to see what happens. You have to fight for your rights. Yeah, you can't get to a point of harassing people or beating people, but a man has to do what he has to do as a man for things to move. So given another opportunity, I'll handle it the same way. And that's me, because I can't change. It's Nimrod. We're talking of an edited, of a clip which has been played around with. Yeah. Do I look like assaulting anybody?
We cannot win on our development journey if we are playing with half of our team on the terraces, right? So I know Kenya is a soccer-loving nation, so picture this. If half of your team is out there on the terraces, what chances do we have to win that match, right? So it's almost impossible, right? So we have to consider that when we talk affirmative action is to proactively bring those that we are living on the terraces to be on the pitch so that we win this match together. So very quickly, therefore, to the 6 key areas, which are also our strategies for supporting Kenya towards accelerating this gender equality agenda. The first one is on women's leadership. We are saying that as long as decisions are being made without women on the table, not only as participants that we consult them, but that they are there on the table, bringing their own lived experiences to inform and shape the decisions that are being made on policies, on budgets, on plans, on everything that's happening at the national level, but also at the county level. We will not win this development journey. So therefore, critical is to ensure women are at the center on those tables where decisions are being made. And I know that this issue is also very in every space we talk two-thirds, but it's not the only place that we'll be looking at the national level. There are many different ways that we are also supporting it, including at the county level, to ensure that we are reflecting women's leadership in every position that decisions are being made. So on education committees, on water committees, on health committees, on the CECs, the appointments, how are we also ensuring that women are part of the decision making at the county level? In addition, we are also looking at representation on the MCAs. We know that in the just ended elections, we only had 115 women elected as MCAs. I think that's just about 10% or so of the entire MCA. So already we have left so many women out on the terraces. So affirmative action, yes, comes in to boost the numbers, but that's not enough. We need to also inculcate and get used to the effect of women being on the leadership tables and helping shape decisions and helping shape budgets and helping shape laws, because they are living these things, right? If it's child marriage, if it's teenage pregnancy, if it's malnutrition, those are issues women are dealing with every day at home. So they need to be part of the solution as well. So that's one of our key strategies. The second strategy is on economic justice. And data has shown that poverty has a female face. So how do we change that to ensure that data is no man's face, it is no woman's face? So we've kind of gotten used to, you know, when we talk of the poorest households, those are female-headed households. When we talk of everything else that's going wrong, women are feeling it the most. So part of our strategy is part of the global community, and Kenya included, and therefore UN Women also supporting that, and the entire UN family as well. We are looking at how do we
put more money in the hands of women so that we lift not only women but their households and their communities out of poverty. So for purposes of this discussion, we are looking exactly at what Honorable Gladys Wanga said, the affirmative action funds, but to follow them up, yes, with training so that they can really be useful, right? We are also looking at the affirmative government procurement opportunities. How much are your counties procuring from women in business? And are you reporting regularly so that we can also track how your county is doing? We are also looking at reducing the burden of unpaid care work at home, because we know that with all of that, women will be kept at home all the time and not really contributing meaningfully in the development of their families economically. The third area, very quickly, is on ending violence, all forms of violence against women. And here we are looking at how counties and, of course, the national level can be supported to ensure that we have large prevention programs that are going on, changing social norms that tolerate and make it okay for women to be battered, for girls to be raped, for children to be married off at the age of 12, for us to normalize as a country high prevalence rates of teenage pregnancy. So this is the support we are giving to say, how do we change the social norms that make it okay for these statistics to be the way they are? And then we're also looking at FGM prevention and response. We are looking at counties budgeting for safe shelters in their counties so that when a woman's life is at risk, when a girl is at risk, they have somewhere they can go to until the danger is past, right? So what investments are we making, therefore, as counties to ensure that at least there is one safe shelter that you are supporting, that you are responsible for, to ensure that lives are not unnecessarily lost. The fourth area is on sexual reproductive health and rights. Again, here, let me just emphasize what my colleagues have already spoken about, and this is the issue of teenage pregnancy primarily. I think the data that has been mentioned by the keynote speaker from UNICEF is very clear about the counties that are doing very badly in terms of teenage pregnancy and child marriage. So I think as counties, we want to know where do we stand, and this is the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey of 2022. So we are here to help think together as communities and say, why is it that our county is doing so badly on teenage pregnancy? What can we do? How do we engage the communities? Because it's all about also social norm change, but also the safeguards we need to put in place so girls stay in school and not become mothers when they are children themselves. Then the fifth area is on climate justice. Again, looking at climate change around us. Gone are the times where we used to say women are the victims of climate change, you know, that they are only there to mop up after damage. Women have some solutions as well. So how are they being involved in all the awareness raising, in all the skilling, in all the tools, so they understand and become agents also of adaptation, mitigation, and prevention. Last but not least, to your question as well, the issue of technology is going to be, as we saw during COVID-19, technology is not just the future, it's right now with us. So if you are not technologically enabled, you will be left behind. And it actually goes against everything we are talking about in terms of inclusion. So even as government is adopting this very vibrant agenda on digitalization and digitization, we need to know that men and women don't access technology in the same way. So we don't want to further widen that gap. So as counties that are here, we need to know, even as we are setting up these hubs, we know that girls and women will not access them in the same way. So being proactive, therefore, in closing that gap before it widens and leaves women out, which happens to be the sixth area of our strategies here in Kenya, as UN Women, but also working with the UN family and supporting progress in these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you so much for the great work that UN Women continue to do in ensuring gender equality and women's economic empowerment. You've touched on very many issues, and I think we will come back to some of them. But I want to come to you now, Senator Catherine Muma. Anna has talked about one of the strategies being women in leadership and ensuring that women's voices are on the table to be able to direct budgets and to have their voices and perspectives on the table. And we know that the 2010 Constitution, one of the key pillars is inclusion, aimed at transforming the lives of minority groups and integrating them into the mainstream, particularly women. However, 10 years down the line, we still see some marginalization, the failure to implement the two-thirds gender principle, and you have been a key participant in the Constitution review process and were a commissioner for the Constitution Implementation Commission. What strategies can be put in place to accelerate the actualization of gender equality and women's empowerment in Kenya?
Thank you so much, Daisy. And just allow me to recognize colleagues who've been sitting here, colleagues senators who are here. I wish to recognize you. I've seen Veronica, Kajwang, Tobiko, I saw Methu, I saw Thangwa, and others. Joyce Korir, thank you so much for sitting in. These things are important. Daisy, first, I think it's important for us to tell the audience that affirmative action is a tool for positive action to redress inequalities. Affirmative action is not about women. Affirmative action is about redressing inequalities everywhere. And you're right that the Constitution of Kenya is about inclusion. In fact, devolution was brought in order to bring equality in development. So devolution is a tool of equality. If you read through the Constitution, the most powerful clause on equality, 27, is in the Kenyan Constitution. Our Article 10 is obsessed with the wording of inclusion. It uses inclusion, equity, equality, social justice, human rights, and all of this. And throughout the Constitution, it is contemplated that everything we do in development should include women, youth, persons with disabilities, minorities, and even in development. That's why even in the finance chapter, we have an equalization fund put there, not for women, but for regions that have been historically marginalized. So I just thought I should say that because oftentimes affirmative action is mistaken to be about bringing women at the decision table. Having said that, you are right that with the principles in place, I think we have come a very long way with the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and we have managed to bring on board more women, particularly at the decision-making tables, and particularly the political decision-making table. I think we have way more women legislators than we ever had after the Constitution. We have way more women at the grassroots in terms of the MCAs in decision-making place. But your question was, where should we go? And my view is this. First, we need to learn to respect the rule of law. Today, the CS Public Service and Gender has actually set up a task force to help us to implement the two-third gender rule. The courts have ruled on this, but we have become a lawless country. We don't want to straight away just respect the rule. I hope, Daisy, this task force which you are co-chairing will finally deliver on the two-third gender rule in political spaces. But we must go beyond two-third in National Assembly and county assemblies. And we had a pre-conference workshop with women NCS from Nandi, Elgeyo Marakwet, and Uasin Gishu, and this is women senators. One of the women senators' agenda is to try and get all the devolved government legislators to understand our role on oversight in order to also ensure that implementation of not just the 2/3, but of other ways of bringing inclusion is done. So one of the things we want to do is to oversight how every decision table in every village, in every ward, has included women, has included persons with disability, has included youth. And that includes the committee, development committee in a hospital, the market committee. All of those are decision-making tables, and they must also respect the 2/3 gender rule. The other thing we need to do is to start carrying out our job on monitoring inclusion in development. How will we do this? We need to actually start looking closely on the implementation tools by national and county governments. The implementation tools include the development plans, and for county governments, this means the CIDP, the annual work plans, and we need to start looking at them. To what extent have these plans factored inclusion of everyone? And it is not about a sentence talking about women, youth, and persons with disability. We also want to see the budget line. How has Uasin Gishu County contemplated how trade in Uasin Gishu is going to involve women, persons with disabilities, and youth? How is the agriculture project within Uasin Gishu going to involve women, youth, and so on? So we need to actually integrate that. And then we are going to monitor the budgets, and we are going to monitor the impacts. Senator Kajwang told you that in the Senate, we have had conversation with the Auditor General, and we want to do impact assessments of what is happening with the monies that are being given to counties and also to the national government. So impact assessments will enable us to know whether the livelihoods of men, women, persons with disability are moving up. And then finally, on what we need to do is actually think futuristic. How well are we protecting our future generations? Chair of session, I don't know whether Kenyans know that between 2016 and 2022, 2.3 million...
Vile nataka niwatangazie ya kwamba nimekutana juzi Jumatatu na Provincial Administration Leadership, wale Regional Commissioners na wale wengine wote, kwa mambo matatu ya muhimu. Ya kwanza ni kwa mambo ya kupigana na madawa ya kulevya na pombe. Vile askofu amesema, and Bishop, you can count on our support in making sure that we eliminate matatizo ambayo tuko nayo ya madawa ya kulevya, vile vile na hasara pombe inatuletea hasa kwa vijana wetu. Ya pili, katika ile mpango yetu ya wazee, walemavu na wale wengine mayatima, tumefungua registration mpya. Tunajua kuna wazee wengi wametimiza miaka 70, lakini for the last 4 years hawajasajiliwa. Tunaanza kuanzia tarehe 1 ili kuanzia January next year tutakuwa tumesajili watu wengine karibu 1500 ambao tutawaweka katika cash transfer, tuweze kuwashughulikia watu wanyonge walioko katika miongoni mwetu. Na pia vile niliahidi wakati wa uchaguzi imesema pesa ya hawa wazee na walemavu na watu mayatima ambayo ilikuwa inalipwa baada ya miezi 4, miezi 5, saa zingine miezi 6. Sasa kuanzia mwezi huu tulilipa kabla hatujalipa mishahara ya wafanyikazi wa serikali. Na hivyo ndivyo itakavyokuwa sasa. We are going to make sure that the vulnerable, wale wazee wa miaka 70 na kusonga mbele na wale wengine tutawashughulikia because they need support more than anybody else. Na ndio watu hawa wa provincial administration wataendelea hivyo. Na ya tatu, tulifanya kusajili wakulima kwa sababu tunataka kutumia kilimo kuondoa aibu ya njaa. Na nilisema hivyo. Mimi nataka niseme ya kwamba kuanzia tena wakati huu we are going to tulisajili mapema mwaka huu tukapata wakulima karibu 500,000, lakini kuna wengine hatukuwapata. So tunataka kumobilize. Bishop utatusaidia kanisani pia kueleza Wakristo wakulima wajisajili, ndio tuwe na register, ndio tuwapatie mbolea, watusaidie kuzalisha chakula, wazalishe cash crops, tupate chakula, tuondoe njaa na tuweke pesa katika mifuko yetu, tufukuze umaskini. Vile vile nataka niwatangazie ya kwamba nimekutana juzi Jumatatu na provincial administration leadership, wale regional commissioners na wale wengine wote kwa mambo matatu ya muhimu. Ya kwanza ni kwa mambo ya kupigana na madawa ya kulevya na pombe. Vile askofu amesema, and Bishop, you can count on our support in making sure that we eliminate matatizo ambayo tuko nayo ya madawa ya kulevya, vile vile na hasara pombe inatuletea hasa kwa vijana wetu. Ya pili, katika ile mpango yetu ya wazee, walemavu na wale wengine mayatima, tumefungua registration mpya. Tunajua kuna wazee wengi wametimiza miaka 70, lakini for the last 4 years hawajasajiliwa. Tunaanza kuanzia tarehe 1 ili kuanzia January next year tutakuwa tumesajili watu wengine karibu 1500 ambao tutawaweka katika cash transfer, tuweze kuwashughulikia watu wanyonge walioko katika miongoni mwetu. Na pia vile niliahidi wakati wa uchaguzi, nimesema pesa ya hawa wazee na walemavu na watu mayatima ambayo ilikuwa inalipwa baada ya miezi 4, miezi 5, saa zingine miezi 6. Sasa kuanzia mwezi huu tulilipa kabla hatujalipa mishahara ya wafanyikazi wa serikali. Na hivyo ndivyo itakavyokuwa sasa. We are going to make sure that the vulnerable, wale wazee wa miaka 70 na kusonga mbele na wale wengine tutawashughulikia because they need support more than anybody else. Na ndio watu hawa wa provincial administration wataendelea hivyo. Na ya tatu, tulifanya kusajili wakulima kwa sababu tunataka kutumia kilimo kuondoa aibu ya njaa. Na nilisema hivyo. Mimi nataka niseme ya kwamba kuanzia tena wakati huu we are going to tulisajili mapema mwaka huu tukapata wakulima karibu 500,000, lakini kuna wengine hatukuwapata. So tunataka
I'm a pastor for Kitui East, and I was summoned.
Bishop utatusaidia kanisani pia kueleza
by the EACC of an incident which happened a week ago around Kitengela in a place I'm trying to put up a home, and yeah.
Ndio tuwe na register, ndio tuwapatie mbolea, watusaidie kuzalisha chakula, wazalishe cash crops, tupate chakula, tuondoe njaa na tuweke pesa katika mifuko yetu, tufukuze umaskini. Vile vile nataka niwatangazie ya kwamba nimekutana juzi Jumatatu na provincial administration leadership, wale regional commissioners na wale wengine wote kwa mambo matatu ya muhimu. Ya kwanza ni kwa mambo ya kupigana na madawa ya kulevya na pombe. Vile askofu amesema, and Bishop, you can count on our support in making sure that we eliminate matatizo ambayo tuko nayo ya madawa ya kulevya, vile vile na hasara pombe inatuletea hasa kwa vijana wetu. Ya pili, katika ile mpango yetu ya wazee, walemavu na wale wengine mayatima, tumefungua registration mpya. Tunajua kuna wazee wengi wametimiza miaka 70, lakini for the last 4 years hawajasajiliwa. Tunaanza kuanzia tarehe 1 ili kuanzia January next year tutakuwa tumesajili watu wengine karibu 1500 ambao tutawaweka katika cash transfer, tuweze kuwashughulikia watu wanyonge walioko katika miongoni mwetu. Na pia vile niliahidi wakati wa uchaguzi,
Asante sana mpenzi mtazamaji, hii ni Bulem QTV na siku ya leo tumekuwa na uzinduzi wa nguo ama vazi rasmi la Bulem QTV, na ningependa niwakaribishe watangazaji wote wa Bulem QTV waweze kusema majina yao na vile vile wataje kile kipindi chao. Nitaanza na mwelekezi na mkurugenzi mkuu wa Bulem QTV ambaye ni Hussein M. Shabani. Bila shaka karibu sana kiongozi. Yes. Naomba uweze kuzungumza na mtazamaji, pia umwambie vile unajisikia kuvalia vazi rasmi la Bulem QTV.
Naam, ahlan wa sahlan wa bin marhaba mpenzi mtazamaji, ni furaha iliyoje kama kibogoi aliyepata meno angalau ya kutafunia ubwabwa. Kama unavyoniona nadhani mtakuwa nang'aa. Hili ni vazi rasmi la runinga ya Bulem Q. Na nichukue fursa hii kusema kwamba mimi majina yangu rasmi ni Hussein M. Shabani, nahodha wa kipindi cha Hekima na Busara. Shukrani.
Naam, asante sana. Mwingine ni Sarafina Musyoki, yuko katika uga huu na pia atawasalimia, waambie kipindi chake bila shaka. Karibu sana. Yes. Asante sana mpenzi mtazamaji, hii ni Bulem QTV na
kutambua talanta. Member journalist at Bulem QTV, and I'll be taking you through different documentaries, health science, the fashions and so many things. Yeah, thank you.
All right, karibu sana. Huyo ni Sarafina na mwingine ni Zipora, vile vile atapita hapa aweze kukuambia majina yake na kipindi anacholeta kwako mtazamaji.
Na hamu mtazamaji mahali popote ulipo, na fahamika kama Zipora Makamu. Kipindi changu ni benchi la makamu, ambapo tutakuwa tunakumbana na kuongea na wasanii na pia kutambua talanta zote hapa nchini Kenya. Pia usisahau pia wanapeperusha michezo viwanjani, ambapo tutakuwa tunaenda kukusanya habari za michezo katika nyanja mbalimbali. Kama ilivyo ukiona vielea jua vimeundwa, na kweli vimeundwa hapa ndani ya Bulem Q. Ukiona vielea vimeundwa.
Asante sana. Vile vile tunaye Victor Baraka ambaye yuko katika uwanja huu na katika uzinduzi ni msomaji wa taarifa na vile vile mwandalizi wa makala. Atakuelezea haya. Karibu sana.
Leo para Presidente Negro mpenzi mtazamaji, na uzinduzi wa vazi hili ndairi kwamba kuwa runinga ya Bulem Q imechukua sura mpya na mwanzo mpya. Jina langu ni Tegarama Victor Baraka na nitakuwa nakuletea kipindi kilio cha furaha kila wiki, kila siku ya Alhamisi hapa katika runinga ya Bulem Q. Shukran sana.
Naam, endelea kutazama Bulem QTV, utaweza kumuona Victor Baraka katika kipindi hicho ilio cha haki kama alivyosema, na wengine ni kama Steve. Karibu sana katika Bulem QTV yaweze kuzungumza na mtazamaji wetu. Paris akijipanga vile vile na Abigail waweze kuzungumza nawe mpenzi mtazamaji. Karibu sana.
Vile vile kama walivyosema hapo awali wenzetu, mimi naenda kwa jina la Steve Mundi Were, nahodha wa kipindi cha Talk Sports.
Talk
Ama
Sport.
ukipenda Dana viwanjani kule Bule Mkiu TV tutaungana na wenzetu ambayo wamekuwa wakicheza mpira. Tunasema wacha mpira idunde kirashford.
Wacha mpira idunde kirashford. Huyo ni Steve Were, mpenzi mtazamaji. Na Ferris anakujia vile vile, Abigail akiendelea na kujipanga ili waweze kuzungumza nawe, wakusalimie na vile vile kukaribishe katika ukurasa mpya wa Bule Mkiu TV. Karibu sana. Right, zungumza na mtazamaji.
Hello everyone, my name is David Marevu, I'm a journalist at Bule Mkiu TV, and I will be taking you through a program named Filing My Case, or Prepare Yourself for the Best. Filing My Case.
Filing My Case. All right, Filing My Case ndio kipindi chake.
Nimesema pesa ya hawa wazee na walemavu na watu mayatima ambayo ilikuwa inalipwa baada ya miezi 4, miezi 5, saa zingine miezi 6. Sasa kuanzia mwezi huu tulilipa kabla hatujalipa mishahara ya wafanyikazi wa serikali. Na hivyo ndivyo itakavyokuwa sasa. We are going to make sure that the vulnerable, wale wazee wa miaka 70 na kusonga mbele na wale wengine tutawashughulikia because they need support more than.
Sasa hii Hustler Fund tunaweka awamu ya pili. Hiyo awamu ya pili tunasema tutawapatia sasa wale watu wa kufanya biashara. Mtaungana watu 10 ama watu 20, tuwapatie kati ya 20,000 na 1,000,000. Mko tayari? Kwa hiyo 1,000,000 mtatengeneza kikundi ya watu 10 ama 20, niwapatie 1,000,000. Lakini iko shida kidogo. Hiyo shida kidogo ni kwamba sasa wewe kama ulihepa na ile 500, hii 1,000,000 utapata namna gani? Ama ulihepa na 1,000. Washida ni mingi. Lakini sasa utajipanga. Si ndio? Sasa wewe hata kama wewe ni mimi, unaweza nikupatie 1 million na umehepa na 500. Lazima ujipange ulipe hiyo 500 ndio upate hii 1,000,000. Mutajipanga? 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 Tutajipanga? Hebu ni wale wanasema tutajipanga tuhangaike. Si ndio? Kwa sababu tunataka kupanga ajira pale ya tunaweka karibu ya bilioni 10 kutengeneza special economic zone kama ile ya Athi River, na tayari tumegazette kwa sababu tunataka kupanga ajira pale ya export ya mambo ya leather, export ya mambo ya textile na exports zingine kwa special economic zone yenye tutaweka hapa Del Monte. Tayari tumekubaliana na gavana wa Kiambu, tumekubaliana na gavana wa kutoka Murang'a. Nyinyi mnanielewa? Na pale tutahitaji vijana 20,000 ama 30,000 watakaofanya kazi kule. Mimi nataka niulize nyinyi vijana wa Kiambu, mpango ya housing, mpango ya digital jobs, mpango wa special economic zone ya agro-processing, value addition, manufacturing, nyinyi mtaungana na sisi ama nyinyi ni wale wa kuchagua jembe? Nyinyi ni watu wa kuchagua jembe? Muko tayari? Vijana wa Kiambu muko tayari? Mbona sikii sauti yenu inakaa muko tayari? Muko tayari? Sindi hapa Del Monte tunaweka karibu bilioni 10 kutengeneza special economic zone kama ile ya Athi River, na tayari tumegazette kwa sababu tunataka kupanga ajira pale ya export ya mambo ya leather, export ya mambo ya textile na exports zingine kwa special economic zone yenye tutaweka hapa Del Monte. Tayari tumekubaliana na gavana wa Kiambu, tumekubaliana na gavana wa kutoka Murang'a. Nyinyi mnanielewa? Na pale tutahitaji vijana 20,000 ama 30,000 watakaofanya kazi kule. Mimi nataka niulize nyinyi vijana wa Kiambu, mpango ya housing, mpango ya digital jobs, mpango wa special economic zone ya agroprocessing, value addition, manufacturing, nyinyi mtaungana na sisi ama nyinyi ni wale wa kuchagua jembe? Nyinyi ni watu wa kuchagua jembe? Muko tayari? Vijana wa Kiambu muko tayari? Mbona sikii sauti yenu inakaa muko tayari? Muko tayari? Hapa Del Monte tunaweka karibu bilioni 10 kutengeneza special economic zone kama ile ya Athi River, na tayari